I noticed when you went through the diet piece for this hypothetical patient, we didn't bring in ketosis. And this ties back to earlier in the conversation, ketones being an alternative fuel for the brain. How does somebody know whether or not including the ketogenic diet would be a worthwhile piece of this puzzle?
I would start with the basic things that I outlined. If those aren't working, then I think you need to start considering more sophisticated, advanced metabolic therapies, which include ketogenic diets, but can also include things like supplements and vitamins and other things and I don't want people taking a handful of vitamins and supplements because that can actually be harmful. So you don't want to over supplement. You don't want high levels of vitamins. You want adequate levels of vitamins and other things. But there's photobiomodulation, red light therapy, other things. So there are lots of metabolic strategies, but there is zero doubt in my mind as a clinician who works with very ill people with treatment resistant mental illnesses, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, chronic unrelenting depression, severe anxiety that paralyzes people. There is no doubt in my mind that ketogenic diets can be life-changing for some people. Um, I certainly don't think everybody needs to do it. Not everybody is struggling that much, and not everybody's metabolism is that dysregulated or um, dysfunctional, so to speak. So the way I think about the ketogenic diet is it's an intervention, just like fasting is an intervention. Um, Now, for some people, prolonged fasts can be really beneficial, as we discussed. And for some people with serious metabolic dysfunction, prolonged ketogenic diets, and we're really talking on the order of years, a few years at least. For some people, prolonged ketogenic diets can be life-saving. There's no doubt in my mind. And the clearest example is epilepsy, but um, we now have over 50 published case reports and pilot trials of the ketogenic diet being used for a wide range of neuropsychiatric disorders, Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression. OCD is just getting published by our group. Wide range of disorders and over 1,900 people represented in those published research studies and countless others, literally thousands of people reaching out to me over social media, sharing their stories of how they have healed and recovered using ketogenic therapies. Um, with that said, it's not a one-size-fits-all treatment. With that said, it's not a panacea. If you're not sleeping well and you're using lots of marijuana, let me be the first to tell you, ketogenic diet is not going to magically fix all of that. Like, you've got to sleep. You've got to stop the marijuana. Sorry. You can't do your keto and you have your marijuana cake too. You got to give up the marijuana. And I've had patients in exactly that situation who are on ketogenic therapy. It was helpful, but the marijuana was really preventing their recovery. So I know firsthand with patients that what I'm saying is true. So it's important to do the whole treatment package, not just one thing.
Let's talk more about that multiple year thing. Somebody who is going to give this a go and they're suffering severely right now. Well, for one, they should definitely work with somebody alongside what we're talking about. But when it comes to that multiple year ketogenic diet to cause what sounds like permanent changes in the brain, do we know what happens in the brain over that multiple years?
It's a really important question. I have a speculation, and I'll share that in just a sec. But I think what we know, because being able to answer that means mechanisms of action. And usually it means having to dissect brain tissue and analyze it to see what's happening to it. We are not allowed to do those studies in humans. Let me just say that and repeat that. Human trials with mechanisms of action like that, they are impossible to do. Why? Because we are not allowed to slaughter humans after doing an intervention and then dissect their brain and analyze it. So that means we have to rely on animal studies, and the animal studies that we most rely on are mouse studies, mice and rats. Now, immediately that raises questions, concerns, criticism. Well, that's a mouse study. That's not a human. Well, okay, but we can't do this study in a human, so I don't know what you want. But what we do know from mouse studies is that ketogenic therapy, and what we know from some imaging studies in humans, for example, is that ketogenic diets change neurotransmitter balance, neurotransmitter regulation function in the short run. And so in a study of people with bipolar disorder on ketogenic therapy, the researchers found that their glutamate levels were reduced. And that is associated with what's called hyperexcitability, or an overactive brain cells or brain regions. Um, but in a nutshell, ketogenic diet changes neurotransmitters. Ketogenic diet also improves insulin signaling and glucose regulation and mitochondrial function within brain cells. We know that from lots of animal studies and other studies, and even human studies where we can do imaging to measure some of those biomarkers. Ketogenic diet results in reduced brain inflammation. So we know that from Dr. Nora Volkow, who's the director of NIDA, a world-renowned neuroscientist. She did one of those studies in people with alcohol use disorder, put half of the people on a standard American diet, half of them on a ketogenic diet, detoxed them. And when they detoxed, one of the findings was improved brain metabolism and reduced brain inflammation. So I'll stop there with just that nutshell of kind of different mechanisms. We know that all of those things are obviously useful, beneficial. And so it may be that the ketogenic diet is just doing all of those things over time. It gets complex fast because the ketogenic diet is also changing the gut microbiome and is changing body-wide inflammation, not just brain inflammation, but in terms of changing the gut microbiome, that may be one of its mechanisms of action because there's this gut-brain connection through the vagus nerve and through other pathways that what's happening in the gut is influencing brain function. So some researchers actually are really more focused on that the ketogenic diet is changing your gut biology, and then that in turn is impacting your brain biology. So it could be through that complex mechanism. At the end of the day, what I believe is happening, and we have a good amount of evidence to support this from animal studies and others, that I believe what's happening is the process that we've talked about. That your brain cells are slowly but surely getting rid of defective mitochondria and replacing them with new and healthy mitochondria. And that your brain cells are actually increasing mitochondrial density so that they are becoming more resilient and more robust. So that after a few years, a lot of people with epilepsy, we have the most evidence within epilepsy, a lot of people with an epilepsy who can become seizure-free on a ketogenic diet are often able to stop the ketogenic diet after somewhere between 2 to 5 years and remain seizure-free. So it is not a lifetime treatment. It is a 2 to 5 year treatment to kind of heal your brain, so to speak, allow your brain to repair itself. And then a lot of patients, not all, because some people do need to do it for life. Unfortunately, we don't exactly know what's going on or why they need the ketogenic diet. But most people can stop it. Most people can stop it, and they appear to be recovered. They remain in remission. And I think what I can safely say is that somehow something happened that allowed them to heal. And whether it's through inflammation, whether it's through the gut microbiome, whether it's through mitochondria, whether it's through neurotransmitters, at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, who cares? I mean, it is interesting to me as a scientist. Great questions to answer. But for the time being, who cares? All that matters is that this person is better and has a better life and is healed and recovering. That's what matters.
If it was you and you were doing, say, 2 to 5 years on a ketogenic diet, if you were in that period of coming off it and seeing how your body reacted, would you just do, say, after a couple years, the odd test day, ramping up the carbs for a day or two and kind of just see how you feel? Basically, somebody transitioning out, how do you guide somebody?
There's actually controversy in the epilepsy field on this exact question. So some people, some neurologists who use the ketogenic diet to treat epilepsy, when they decide, okay, today's the day, we're going to transition off, they'll say, eat whatever the hell you want. I don't care. Just do whatever you want. And for some patients, that works out fine. For some, it doesn't. And then they have a seizure, and then it's like, oh, you need the ketogenic diet again. I tend not to do that because when you tell people eat whatever you want, they almost always go for ultra processed junk food. And they're like, oh, I've been craving brownies and ice cream and, all this kind of candy bars and everything. So they just binge eat all that. I usually tend to have people gradually increase protein levels, gradually increase carbohydrate levels in the form of vegetables and fruit, and see how they tolerate it. So I'm still keeping them on a whole food diet, real whole foods. But now they may not be in ketosis anymore if they're eating a lot of fruit or if they're eating a lot more meat. They may no longer be in ketosis. And then we just assess what's happening. If their symptoms are coming back, especially if they're coming back with a vengeance, then we know, okay, get back on the keto diet. Like you're not ready. What I find is that the longer people are on it, this 2 to 5 year thing really is true. I know that that's even a broad range. 3 years is a long time. Whether you have to do it for 2 years or 5 years, it is a big difference in the grand scheme of life. In the grand scheme of suffering from schizophrenia, it's trivial. In the grand scheme of suffering from treatment-resistant epilepsy, it's trivial. 2 years, 5 years. The real question is not 2 years or 5 years. The real question is seizure freedom or not. The real question is with schizophrenia is, do I want remission of my schizophrenia or not? Do I want to live the rest of my life disabled from schizophrenia, or do I want to recover from schizophrenia? And then the question of 5 years, 5 years, it becomes irrelevant to most people. It's like, yeah, that we'll figure it out and we'll deal with it. And yeah, it might be unfair. Yeah, it might suck, but whatever. We'll suck it up and just do it.
And do you find during that 2 to 5 years, people need to be 100% strict? Because it's easy to say between the two of us here, do this in conversation. But when people are out in the real world, there's parties and different one off events. And somebody might just have 100 grams of carbs one day and bump themselves out of ketosis. Would you say if that happens, that resets that 2 to 5 year time frame? Or is there a little bit of leeway there for people to have quote unquote off days?
So it's a really important question. From my experience, for people with severe mental illness, from my experience, in the first 6 months to 1 year, no cheat days are allowed. Period. End of story. Now, people will go ahead and cheat anyway, but they almost always suffer the consequences. Almost always, their symptoms come back with a vengeance. So that means their hallucinations and delusions were finally, once and for all, starting to get better. Maybe they got so much better that the person now thinks, I'm cured. I'm cured. I don't need this keto diet anymore. I don't need any of it. I'm cured. I'm going to eat whatever I want. They eat whatever they want. Within 24 hours, the hallucinations are tormenting them. They're louder than ever. They're like trying to drown them out. Or they're suicidal or whatever. In those situations, first and foremost, I'm a psychiatrist and I make sure that the person is safe. And so we work on a safety plan and we do whatever we need to do to keep that person safe and keep everyone else safe. But I immediately get them back on a ketogenic diet. I might even encourage them to fast, do a water fast for 24 to 48 hours if they're open to that, because that is the fastest way to get back into a high level of ketosis. And I've been through that many times now with patients. And I want to just say that situation that I just described is the primary reason patients with severe mental illness can, in fact, do this diet and stick with it. One of the biggest criticisms of this diet from people is like, nobody can do a diet. Nobody can stick with it. I tried to lose 10 pounds and I couldn't stick with it. It was too hard. Well, yeah, it was too hard for you because you actually just losing 10 pounds is not that motivating and you don't really care that much about it. And you'd rather have your cake and you'd rather have your party with your friends. And so you can't stick with that diet. That normal person who's just trying to lose 10 pounds, yeah, I get it. It's really hard. For the patients that I'm working with, they are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their sanity. When they break the diet and their hallucinations come back and torment them, 2 days later, they're saying to themselves, I'll never do that again. that party was awful. I'm not going to parties anymore. Or if I do go to parties, I'm just going to drink some like sparkling water. I'm going to drink sparkling water with a lime in it, and that's good for me. And I'll just eat my keto meal right before I go so that I'm not hungry while I'm there, and I'll be fine. But I'm never going to do that again because that was really awful. I almost ended up in the hospital, or I almost ended up dead. And that is the reason why I can get patients with severe crippling mental illness to do this diet and stick with it. If they didn't have that negative consequence of breaking the diet, I wouldn't be able to get them to do the diet. Weight loss experts often can't get people to stick with the diet. Again, because the consequences of breaking it aren't that bad. Actually, they're rewarding. If anything, people feel better. Oh, it was such a fun party. I really enjoyed all that food and it was such a nice time. It's like, well, there goes your weight loss journey.
I hear what you're saying there with that piece of reinforcing this is working and adding that extra layer of motivation to stick to the diet from that point forward. But metabolically, having that bolus of glucose, does that reset the time frame? Do you feel like metabolically they need to go through 2 to 5 years again from that point, or it's all part of that, you know, 2 to 5 year period, even with the odd cheat day and that reinforcement?
No, if the cheat days are short-lived, 1 or 2 days, it by no means does that reset the clock. And the reason, again, so we know that with the epilepsy field, we know that with some other kind of areas. So the way that I think about it is that, again, I mean, we really don't know the precise mechanism of action of what is it doing and why 2 to 5 years? Why not 1 month? Why not 10 years? Why not a lifetime? Like what is happening magically during this 2 to 5 year period that is resetting the system and allowing people to then move on with their life and do whatever the diet they want and live happily ever after. We really don't know, but my strong speculation is it's this mitochondrial biogenesis and mitophagy and mitochondrial density, these issues. And that is just a slow process over time. And one cheat day doesn't like take your cell all the way back to complete utter mitochondrial dysfunction and dysregulation. It might take it back a little bit. It might stop the healing process for a few days. It might even take you a few steps back, but it doesn't reset the clock. Like you've done some of the repair, you've done some of the autophagy that needed to be done, but you haven't finished. You haven't really reset and reestablished a new normal for that cell yet. And that's what we're trying to do is we're not only trying to clean out all the waste, buff up the cell, but we're trying to establish a new normal for that cell, a new normal of resilience and function and regulation. And that process, I think I can say, based on the empirical evidence that we have with epilepsy for 100 years, that process appears to take 2 to 5 years for most people.
Okay, so for somebody that is going to go all in on the ketogenic diet, apply what we've been talking about today, the different levers, really give this a go. You quickly mentioned supplements. Any supplements you'd include along with all that to help facilitate these metabolic changes?
The two supplements that I most commonly recommend as augmentation with the ketogenic diet are magnesium and light salt. So a combination of sodium and potassium. Um, so electrolytes can get depleted. A lot of people are deficient in magnesium anyway. So those are kind of standard pillars in my mind. Light salt, the combination of sodium and potassium has been found to reduce cardiovascular events in pretty good population studies, like in China, randomized controlled trials, I should say, in China. They've like taken thousands of people. So I stand solidly behind those two recommendations. The other supplements that are plus or minus, depending on their lab values and other factors. So I don't universally recommend these to people. But the other ones that might get included are carnitine, creatine, um, and then there are lots of others. I mean, some people use CoQ10 or other CoQ supplements. Some people use different vitamins and anti-inflammatory agents and resveratrol. And I mean, there are all sorts of other things that are all related to everything we've talked about, metabolism and mitochondrial function. Um, but I don't universally recommend those supplements. And the biggest takeaway I want to just say with supplements, because everybody hears a pill that you can take and then they don't want to do the other work and they just want to take the pill. Let me be clear. If you are not going to change your lifestyle and you think you're going to get away with only taking carnitine or creatine, good luck to you. I'm not wishing you poorly. If it works for you, great. What I can tell you is I don't think it's going to work, and don't be shocked when it doesn't work because you're going to have to do the work. Um, you're going to have to do the work to get it to work. And the work is changing diet and lifestyle and other things. And then the supplements can be added when needed. When you're doing the work and it's just not yielding the results that we should expect, or when you reach a plateau and something just it seems like you need a nudge to get to that next level, that's when some of these supplements, vitamins, can intermittently be good interventions.
How do you feel about urolithin A? There's a lot of talk in our world about that in general, and it directly relates to mitochondria. What do you think about it?
So urolithin A, we actually it is a mitochondrial supplement that induces mitophagy and mitochondrial biogenesis. We have reasonably good data actually in elderly people that just taking urolithin A can increase muscle capacity. It can increase strength and muscle endurance. Just taking the supplement. Now, obviously, exercise is the better way to do it, but if you add some urolithin A with your exercise, you might get a little more bang for the buck. So I'm not opposed to urolithin A. Again, I'm often reluctant to talk too much about supplements because the takeaway for too many people is, oh, I'll go out and take that supplement and not do any of that other hard stuff. Or they hear that stuff and they're like, well, I'm on a healthy diet. Well, they're not on a healthy diet, but they tell themselves, I'm on a healthy diet. My diet is fine. I eat whole grain cereal every morning and I, with skim milk and and I have my Nutri-Grain bars, which are ultra processed foods that are loaded with sugars and other things. And they really do tragically think that they're eating a healthy diet because some dietitian told them that was a healthy diet, and it's not a healthy diet. So, and unfortunately, taking urolithin A probably won't do much for that. But yeah, as an augmentation strategy to promote mitochondrial health, especially if somebody just needs a little extra edge, yes, I am all for it. Do I think that urolithin A on its own will stop seizures? No. There's no reason for me to believe that urolithin A on its own will stop seizures, but a ketogenic diet will. Sometimes, at least. It doesn't for everyone, but a ketogenic diet can stop seizures. And that is really, really powerful and life-changing.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
There is zero doubt in my mind as a clinician who works with people with treatment-resistant mental illnesses that ketogenic diets can be life-changing for some people. The very first signs of Parkinson's disease